glad that there is actually something. I was getting worried. Still, yeah, there's no clear-cut, searchable definition of Aries diffraction. It's not being recognized in the search engine, like, at all.
Is it not
It's
being
like been
recognized?
completely removed, the entire concept, if it ever existed.
Arwin, is it that it's not being recognized, or is it actually being censored? Because if they let this out, that it's common knowledge that actually the thing that we see at the horizon is subject to something else, and it ain't curvature, it's going to throw into question the whole idea that we live on a sphere. So perhaps it's not being found on purpose.
That could be. That could very well be. It's extremely suspicious and useless, because you can just demonstrate it to yourself, as we have been, that it even works in a small scale.
Well, so I remember back when we were doing the Isle of Man stuff, and me and Nathan had spotted that this mirror thing, this line of dirty air that I called it at the time, went right the way across the picture, and we were waiting for the Rumpus and Co. to point that out to us and basically give a counter to it.
Yeah, we're still waiting 8 months for it.
They never did it. They never pointed it out.
Waiting for 8 months now.
They never did it.
Promised that he would.
I know, but the point is they never did it. They never pointed it out. Now, I think it's because they were deliberately swerving it. Because looking back, they should have really pointed it out pretty early on, but they never, ever. And it's like, well, why?
In my mind, if Flat Earth is going to be released, then you're going to start hiding information. If they know that it's going to come out, or they're releasing it, or whatever, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever.
They want it to be a fad, die out, and then move on. That's what they want. It's very simple.
I went down the same route, Arwin. I was looking for this Aries diffraction maybe a month ago, and I was like all day looking for it. And I was looking for the video because I saw it live in Iron Realm Media when they talk about it, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the video. I couldn't find the YouTube name, and I had to go to Master V and I go like, hey, dude, you know, what is the name of that hangout that you were in talking about this Aries diffraction with the guys in Iron Realm? And I think Nathan pointed to me and he linked the video, and then after I saw the video again, hangout. Then I went back to do a little research and I found the details that I was looking for.
It's below the hangout. Every hangout, I have that video about perspective in there with me and Zach. So check it out.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by What Shape is the World, The Plain Truth, Sleeping Warrior, Roxanne, Ranty Flat Earth, Music, Jose, Event Horizon, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello. Hello.
Whoop, whoop.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hello. Right, we'll rattle our way through housekeeping. Let's see how concise we can keep this. Are there any signs of Earth curvature, ladies and gentlemen?
No.
Not that I can see, no.
None that I can see, but Rumpus in chat says he can model it.
Yeah, it's modelled to both pseudoscience and a reification fallacy. So any evidence of Earth rotation? Axial rotation? Any of that?
No.
No.
Rumpus some crayons if he wants to try and model it.
Same answer as last time.
You need the crayons, though, you're not using.
Hey, this came up on the last show. So
Crayons,
any evidence
Ranty.
of the distance to the sun?
No.
I'm working on it. But no.
What do you mean you're working on it? What are you doing?
Do you want me to go through that Venus thing again?
Well, you might as well give us a quick, a nice concise summary of what you found with Jodrell Bank. That'd be lovely.
Right. Before you start, it's not building a very, very long measuring tape, right?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
The claim is that radar ping reflections from Venus is how they calculated the distance to the sun. But when I've been looking into this for the purposes of this paper that I've got to write, I can't find persuasive evidence that this is actually true. I find papers that say that they claim that they've got reflections from Venus, but when they present their evidence, they use phraseology that weakens their position or weakens their claim significantly and introduces doubt, in that they claim that they had faulty equipment. They only got ping reflections apparently on 7 days out of 14, I think it was, or 13 days, not every day. And that they had to compensate for channel corrections, when I have to ask the question, well, why are you compensating? Why aren't you just presenting the data that you got without it being compensated? And then telling us of the issues, and then we can decide whether or not we accept the evidence as credible or good. And it's creating doubt when you say that you got ping reflections from Venus, and then you use wiggle words to dilute the strength, because it appears that they should be saying, well, we think we got reflections from Venus, but we're not too sure, because there were days that it didn't work and we had to fiddle around with the results on the channels. And basically, it's not exactly a strong persuasive argument that satisfies me that there's no doubt here. There is doubt. They shouldn't be getting faulty data. They should get a ping reflection from Venus every time they fire it. It's that simple. And they didn't do it.
Were they using radar?
Yeah, from the Jodrell Bank Observatory, owned by University of Manchester.
Okie dokie. So, any evidence that you can have a gas pressure without a container? There's a lot of people out there that believe that the medium of space, a vacuum, exists beyond where we breathe and live in the gas pressure we all know and love. So, is there any evidence that you can have a gas pressure without a container?
Well,
there's no
gravity barrier out there. It's
I
unusually strong. That's keeping all the gas in.
Oh, I'll happily move on. Unless anybody's got anything to add, I'll happily move on from that point. Use that to segue into, is there any scientific evidence of gravity?
No.
Well,
No.
Well, just so we keep the housekeeping on track, any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No.
If you bring papers and crayons, I can draw that for you.
What's with all the crayons?
Don't give the crayons to the rumpus. No, we'll eat them.
If you want to do it properly, you have to paint. Otherwise, it's not going to look right.
Speak to Matt Simmons at NASA.
Otherwise, it's not going to look right. Come on.
Speak to Matt Simmons at NASA. He'll paint you a picture.
It's crayons, because it has to be.
Yeah.
Right, well, what about the R value? Any evidence of Earth radius? Any elusive R value proof come its way, our way?
You've seen a lot in supermarkets recently.
Yeah, a lot of supermarket floors seem to conform to the Earth radius value. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, there was this classic answer from Brenda once. She said, the Earth has been mapped in the surface, all the land masses and all the corners of the sea, all the surface. Therefore, we extrapolated, we put it in a model, and then is an Earth radius, the size we know today.
Good word, extrapolate, isn't it?
It is the equator distance. The circle of the equator has a radius, perhaps.
Hey guys, can I just intersect for a second? We've got the trolls trying to bait me in the side chat, trying to make me ask Anthony and Roxanne why they were slagging me off earlier. Now, let me just say, I don't really care. You could have been slagging me off all you like. I really don't care. Or you could have been saying lots of good things about me. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I just want them to know that it doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. If you think that whatever the trolls have said over the last year, nothing could be worse than that. So,
well, to be honest,
don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the trolls.
Well, hang on, let me just address that.
Yeah, but I don't even really want to know, Anthony, because I'm not even bothered. You could have said
that
anything.
Concludes the housekeeping. Anything. Excellent. Thank you for participating.
You could have said anything and it wouldn't have bothered me. At the end of the day, I know you personally, we speak a lot off air, on air. You know, it doesn't make any difference.
It's nothing I haven't already said to you in the past, Francie, and it wasn't said as a criticism either.
Well,
I was
I'm not-
slagging you off for not having a tripod.
This
So
kind of
what we're trying
sounds
to
like
do
when a
is-
lady says, no, really, there's no problem.
Yeah, what they're trying to do is cause division. So what they're trying to do is say, "Oh, we overheard some conversation in the before, and now we're going to just bait them into arguing with each other and trying to fall out." Well, it's not going to work. There's bigger things to talk about. That's called flat Earth, and
Yeah.
that's what we're all invested in.
Yeah, so how's about that evidence for how you can have a gas pressure next to a vacuum of space without some kind of membrane?
Exactly. Great show yesterday. Incredible footage from Ranty. Wow. At how we could all see the yellow truck. Clearly, the P1000 is worth the money. Oh, yeah, the yellow pickup truck. That was absolutely cool as hell. Shout out to Alicia for the super chat. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it.
Well, let's not lose sight of the fact that you morons all think that we can have a gas pressure without a container, right? Well, you can argue as much as you want about things that you think or said or whatever. Who cares? The fact remains that you can't have a gas pressure because conspiracy cats all told us without the balloon, there is no pressure. Well, we are that balloon. Earth is that balloon. But if you pop that membrane, then there is no pressure. So the problem you guys have got is, yeah, you can try and cause division if you want to. Who says that we weren't trolling you?
Yeah, it's not going to make any difference at the end of the day. We're all invested in flat Earth. This is what we're working towards. I know you personally, and I know that the trolls are just there to cause division, so they can just sod off because I don't care.
Well, to be honest, I didn't say anything.
Find you down.
Oh, if they haven't realised by now that what they're saying doesn't affect me, they're never going to realise that.
It's just cheap tactics, man. That's all.
On the one hand, Ranty, you can kind of understand because, you know, by asking questions like how can you have a gas pressure without a container, you are debunking their space religion because it is fundamentally about space. You know, the Earth itself is fairly insignificant in their worldview. It's just a little dot in a massive vacuum. Well, you can't actually have that vacuum because we've got gas pressure. Entropy's a real bitch. And you don't have any scientific evidence of gravity, so you've just got a space religion being debunked by us daily. It must be heartbreaking because many of these people have lived like we lived without actually understanding that they were in a religion. But here is us poking them in the face daily. You're in a religious group. You're a bonkers zealot. Yeah, I'd be pissed off too, but I don't care. Poke, poke, poke. You're all in a cult. You've all got a religious belief in space.
And
if you just let them slide about the pressure versus a vacuum without a container, it will be hundreds of hours probably of obfuscation and talking about freaking satellites and ISS and planets and the sun and the moon. So you got to stop them right in the track. Before we go to that point, let's discuss this point. How can you have the gas pressure next to a vacuum without a container? Because that stops all the obfuscation after that, you know? They will hold to the sun, the moon, and the stars if you don't talk about this first.
Yeah, and I think what we need to look back on as well is how they were able to get away with the globe lie. I suppose everybody knows the internet right now, but if you go back 25 years ago, I didn't. If somebody lived in the next town, I would never bump into them, never get a chance to speak to them or anything, because essentially we only had newspapers, TV, and your own circle of friends. That was it. You know, it's only recently, since the explosion of the internet, that we're able to come together and formulate these tests and to check our environment and basically come to the conclusion, well, in the past, people didn't have the luxury that we do right now of good Zoom cameras, internet, being able to connect with like-minded people. In the past, everyone was dispersed. We didn't have the technology. And if you go back 100 years, 150 years ago, there was classes, different levels of class. So you would have the upper echelons of the class that made all the schooling, did all the schooling. And you had the lower echelons who were put into things like the workhouses and stuff like that. So the education that they got, if anything, would have been the globe. And they would have been told this regardless of whether they could prove it or not prove it. Because their optics, if they ever got a chance to look over oceans and stuff, they wouldn't know what a mile was or 2 mile was. It was just the way the nature of the life that those people lived back then, you know? So the higher echelons who created this global lie were able to push it down onto the lower class people, because we didn't have what we have now, which is a voice, and we didn't have the internet so we can connect to each other.
Talking of internet connections, Ranty, so Ranty Flat Earth, aka Shane, can you give Marilyn Wisby a shout out? She's saying, who's this talking now? Marilyn, who was on the, I saw her on the Globe Lie tour. I've met in person
Marilyn,
a couple of times.
Yeah. I did see you down at the meetup down in London, but I didn't get a chance to speak to you, Marilyn. But I was there. I was the one doing the filming whilst I was there with the camera.
Did you get us all in focus, Ranty?
I've got you in focus, actually, funnily enough, and it's a level.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
No judders.
No judders.
Yay!
Big shout out to Lottie says in the chat.
So yeah,
attracted.
So yeah, I'm just going back to saying why they were able to get away with it for so long and make it, you know, and have it. I mean, people like now, a 20-year-old person now wouldn't know what it was like to do without the internet.
Well, the thing is,
be able to connect with other people.
The thing is, though, there is evidence that suggests that they did have trans-world trade, at least back in the day, because the pharaohs from the Egyptian era, where all the pyramids and all that are from, the mummies that they found cocaine from Colombia inside the bodies. So somehow they were getting Colombian cocaine, as naughty as that may be, across the Atlantic into Egypt, and the pharaohs were all enjoying the benefits of cocaine.
Or people figured out that mummies didn't tend to get ripped to pieces in the customs office. They faked a mummy and put cocaine in it so that they could smuggle stuff. In recent times, why would you assert that the mummy was real and had cocaine?
Very smart. Excellent point.
Most of history, Anthony, is all bollocks. We've been fed a pack of lies. And listen to this in terms of logic. 9/11 was completely fabricated in terms of the way it was been presented to us in the media. We all know this, but it'll go down in history as men with box cutter knives. So 100 years from now, someone comes back to study the history, so they go, well, that was obviously an event. There it is in history. Well, why would you trust any of the history that they give us now? It's all gone through the memory hole in terms of what needs to be there and what doesn't. If it wasn't that way, why can't we find all this information on Aries diffraction to hand on the internet? Why? Well, because it's all been memory holed.
It's a terrifying realization, really, for me. Because I do kind of trust Google to some extent, and to just see this blatant obfuscation is just...
So right now, there's many people in the chat. There's got to be some globe believers that wants to argue any of the points on the housekeeping or any other point. They are welcome to join the show. I will be gladly happy to drop the call so you can join. Just let us know in the chat. Thank you.
That's a good shout. We haven't had a baller in for a few days unless I've been ad homing within the first breath they came on with. So yeah, any ballers in the chat want to bring something? Definitely come on.
A lot of people that have joined the debate now and started watching it, or have been watching it recently, don't know what it was like in the beginning when the debates first came out. See, the panel now, where it's full of flat earthers, the panel back then was full of ball earthers. And it was people like Anthony that was coming in, and he was the single person. He was the single flat earther against 9 globers. And then we went through a period of more flat earthers started to join, so it was more 50-50. But quite often before it would get 50-50, the globers had a way of removing us from the debate before we could talk. It was called sniping. Of course, we know how they've done that now. But this was all very early. I mean, for the first 100 episodes, it really was dog eat dog. The globers were definitely pulling all the dirty tricks. And now they don't want to come in because we've got all the answers. When they thought they had all the answers in the beginning, which essentially we didn't have the answers to their arguments. But now we have the answers to that. They don't want to join. They do not want to be here.
Kind of speaks volumes, doesn't it? Because it's badly evident.
I was kind of hoping on the anniversary episode that we'd get a load of people in with the crappy old questions that we used to get. So we can say, well, that's just a reification fallacy. Well, that's just affirming the consequent. That's just making the question. Just run through all the really early ones that we're all stumped on. That would be ace.
But like I say, we're evolving our debates. We're evolving the answer. Well, not the answers, but we're working out the answers. Whereas in the beginning, the information may have been out there somewhere, but we didn't know it. Now we worked it out and we found it out. And they hate that because they get their ass handed anytime they come in. But yes, an open panel. I mean, I'll step out if anybody wants to join in.
What's your link for, Arwen?
Oh, that's the Flat Earth Early Bird tomorrow.
Oh, how did it go for yesterday? For today,
Fantastic.
rather.
It was today. It was really good.
I saw it streaming, but I was setting up this show, so obviously I'm very busy just before the show starts. But I did see you were streaming. I was like, oh, hey, Arwen's got a pre-show on. Wicked.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been up pretty early these last few weeks. I thought, you know what? I'll catch some extra sunlight. I'll just keep getting up early and start like a morning breakfast show, like really nice and slow, and people can talk about anything as long as it doesn't get too.
So
right.
You've no worries about being sniped out of your own hangout or being porn bombed them.
No, I'm not opening it up to the public. I just do it by Skype. That's my rules. So if you want to get on the show, then contact me on Skype, and if I deem you a reliable person, then I will give you the Hangout link, and I will every time throw it into the Master B chat as well.
I'd be up for that, Arwen, if you want some help early in the morning.
Everyone is welcome.
Excellent.
That I trust. So you're all welcome. It's just I'm gonna do this, so everyone has. If they're like have all this energy before the show and just waiting, you can join my show and.
Alan B says, can he come on?
Tell us what's on your mind.
Alan B wants to be on your show. So can you tell us what aperture is? Because you don't understand what aperture is, Alan. Tell us in one sentence what aperture is, Alan.
I mean, I'll step out if you want to come in, Alan, and you can tell us directly what aperture is. Do you want me to step out for you, Alan? If you do, I'll leave in the next 30
Alan
seconds.
B says, I do, you don't. Thanks, Alan. One more time, Alan. What is aperture?
I'll see you guys soon then. I think Alan's joining in, so I'll leave you to it.
All right. Amazing job with that with the boat again. It was really awesome.
Yeah, I use Ranty in one of my videos to convince my auntie that the world is flat. So good stuff.
Oh, hi, Adam.
Yeah. Hi, dudes. All right?
Very well. Good to have you.
Hi, Adam.
Just got in, guys.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Roxanne. You all right, mate?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, all grand. You good event?
I'm sitting here with my ears pinned back. I'm waiting to see if I'm going to see an argument from someone that thinks they live on a ball.
There's no argument to have.
There's none.
So,
it's definitely gone quiet on their side. You might not get one today, Roxanne, I'm afraid.
I might miss it.
No complaining. I like these little calm moments.
I'd heard a little bit at the first show at the end. You were saying you was having trouble getting hold of Rayleigh's criterion info, or Owen was. It was something me and Zach were discussing last night. He was saying people were struggling to find information on it.
Yeah, Aries diffraction.
But doesn't that make total sense? That you would find it difficult to find something that literally causes an obstruction at the horizon where they claim it to be Earth curvature. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah,
makes
they're obstructing it. They're hiding Aries diffraction behind the curvature. Yeah.
But I was just going to say, if you just search for Rayleigh's criterion, you'll tend to find it all comes up a lot better, much more relevant stuff within that, are we?
How do you spell that?
RAYLEIGH apostrophe S.
Yeah, the Rayleigh criterion. If you want to search phrase.
And if you go into images, there's a lot of presentational slideshows. I was looking for a few last night. So if you go through onto Google Images, you'll see there's people with slides, and there's quite a few nice ones that aren't specifically related to viewing distances over a flat plane or a ball, but certainly explain the point in terms of divergence and reduction of image size. And particularly the merging at Rayleigh's criterion. So plenty there. But if you're struggling, Owen, I'll get Zach to send you some stuff over. But I'm in the middle actually. The reason we were looking at it last night is we've got Mark Devlin on Friday night. And we're going to pick his brains, but we always like to do a little bit of our own work as well. So we're putting a bit of a slideshow together anyway on this, Owen, with some of the work. We're trying to make it a bit more useful for people like Ranty so that we can start to get a minimum amount of diffraction that will be occurring and image. So we're trying to do a few formulas with regards to that so we can start to maybe stick stuff in, say, well, X amount is down to this Rayleigh criterion with Zach's formula, and therefore you can make suggestions as to what other effects are coming into play if the level of obstruction is much greater than predicted from Zach's formula. So
I'll need to dig into this. It looks pretty fast.
Well, watch Friday night, and then we can all have a chat next week if you want, Owen. Just
all right, yeah, sure.
This is a beautiful idea to revisit this subject about the Aries diffraction and the angle of attack and all this stuff after the recent last at least 2 or 3 weeks when this subject has been touched on again, and people just putting little tests out there that things do disappear from the bottom up. Depends on the distance on the cameras you're using. So yeah, revisiting the subject and concisely presenting some other information where you can gather that you can understand it better, that would be really, really awesome.
Does anyone mind if I play a bit of our or Zach and myself discussing this? It's just playing now, but if I can just unmute it, but just pipe up when you want me to shut it up or shut us up, if that makes sense.
Nitrogen, oxygen based atmosphere, and then 1.33 is water. Now they did this because atmosphere plays such an effect that they can only make the limit. So they have a perfect nitrogen-based atmosphere, and any more moisture, dust, humidity, wind blowing, there's all kinds of things that can mess with it. The angle will only get bigger after that. So that's why they call it the angular resolution limit. Next, please. And here is just to show that you can go to any university pretty much in the world, I bet, and they have papers on Rayleigh's criterion. Here's one from Harvard. It even shows you how to set up an experiment to do this. The important part is right down here. It just shows in the comments, Rayleigh's criterion is usually applied to circular apertures, where the common resolution is when the center of one Aries disk pattern falls into the first minimum of the Aries disk pattern of the second source. And then it shows, I just wanted to show that the equation always stays the same. Radians equals 1.22 times lambda, or wavelength of light, over the diameter. And like I said, again, you can go to any university and they will have papers on this. It is a very well-known, it's taught in beginner's physics.
You just pause it a sec there, Nathan.
Very handy.
That 1.22 is quite interesting because that's in the perfect oxygen nitrogen mix. So when Zach's discussing the kind of minimum maximum you're gonna see, that really is a figure that gives under an assumption of very, very controlled atmospheric conditions. So that's always going to be pretty much in the real world an unobtainable figure, but it is there to give you an indication from the Rayleigh criterion. And like I said, from that, you can then start to apply some logic to say, well, how much of the obstruction is atmospheric from that. But it's important to state that that is a maximum that you would ever be able to see under the most perfect of conditions.
Well, I think computers would not have a lot of trouble with figuring out a more interactive with the world.
No, well, that's the impossible. This is what we were saying last night. It's fine if you can maybe over 10 miles, the atmosphere is going to be homogeneous. But as if you're getting up to 30, 40s, you're going to have different levels of atmospheric humidity across that distance, and that's where you see it in Ranty's pictures how things in the foreground are slightly, and so it's using this maximal point that you can see and then calculating the differential between the maximal point of what you could see and what you can see that could then start to give you some indication as to what the atmospherics are like based on the level of obstruction and also any miraging effects that you might see. That gives indicators as well. So it's
there's an additional point to add there, though. When you're saying that the atmosphere can be considered as homogeneous in short distances, in addition to that sentence, the atmosphere may well be considered non-homogeneous after that distance. That point's kind of moot. But what needs to be mentioned is that when you're doing observations over water, whether it's tidal or not, salt water or not, fresh water or not, if the sun's out, there is a rate of evaporation. It might not be a lot in winter, but it's still evaporating to some degree. In summer, there's a lot of evaporation. And if you look at the refractive index of water vapor, not condensed water, water vapor is less dense than the air that it sits in. That's why it rises. But if you're looking through that water vapor, which we all call heat haze, it's not actually heat haze we're looking through. Yeah, it looks like heat haze, but it's actually the vaporization of the water into its gas form, and that refractive index value to that is less dense. So what that does is bends the light up. It doesn't bend the light down the way that they demand, because it's not condensed water; it's vapor in its gas form, and it's less refractive. So and it's less dense. So because it's less dense, it bends the light up, not down. And they don't ever tell you that. You have to work that out yourself.
Indeed.
Come on, Adam, say something. Oh, he's gone on to mute.
Anyway, I've been looking for one. Been looking for one. Just very short. I've been looking through one of these documents about the Rayleigh criterion, and they have a average resolution limit for people. It's 5 to the 10s minus 4 rad, whatever rad radius.
Yeah. So within the formula, it takes into account the lens, basically. So that's the other thing we're looking at is that Rayleigh criterion stuff. You'll see that tends to relate when you use it, and when Zach's done it, he's done it with the human eye. So, and this is part of what we want to get some feedback on is kind of really from Ranty is to ascertain what figures we should be putting in there when we're using the P900 and the P1000. And I think some comparative data on that with Ranty's pictures and some distances should start to show the quality difference of actually put some numbers. I know you don't necessarily like numbers, but put some numbers on the differences of what is resolvable between those two different lenses. So we want to look at that, because I would say obviously that criterion stuff tends to relate to viewing with the eye, human eye. But to me, it's not a calculator in the sense of their ball calculator, but it's something that gives you an indicator as to the causation of your obstruction, because if you can say I should be able to see this much, yet this much is obstructed, then it gives you an indication as to the effect that the atmospherics is having.
Can I change topics slightly? Well, completely. Does anybody mind if we swap topics?
Yeah, go ahead. That's why everyone paused.
Partisan politics. Does anybody have an interpretation of what I mean when I say the phrase partisan politics?
Is this what you and Roxanne and Robin were chatting about? I caught
yeah.
But I was busy, so I only heard little bits. But yeah.
So partisan politics is the phrase that's used in the law, and what it means is different to every person. And we've all got a view on what we think the shape of the earth is, and we'd all have a view on what we consider partisan politics to be. But it was defined in a particular case. And when you read through the decision of the judges, or of this particular judge speaking about partisan politics, it dawns on me that heliocentricity satisfies the definition of partisan politics, because all of the criteria that's written in the judge's decision is exactly what heliocentricity is in schools. So whatever you consider partisan politics to be, and I'll basically tell you that it's kind of like strong views of a group of people. So it can be anything. It can be about anything. It can be any topic. The stronger the view, the more likely it is to be partisan, because it's seen as getting more right wing the more aggressive it becomes. And obviously we see partisan tactics by the ballers. We see trolling techniques. We see people that ring ranty at 3 a.m. That's partisan behavior, because it's strong views by a particular group or sect. I'll use the word sect of people that are adamant that they will disrupt at all costs, and they don't really care. Now that makes it partisan. And heliocentricity really is a partisan political position, because one of the criteria that was decided by the judge that made the word partisan satisfied is where there is little or no counter. It's one-sided and it's not balanced with an opposing view, or doesn't get told that there is an opposing view. Now, the reason why this is important is because I've been looking into the national curriculum, and although the word geocentric or geocentricity is used, it's used like as a footnote rather than as the comparative argument. But obviously flat earth as a topic doesn't get mentioned at all. I haven't found it at all yet. It might well be there buried in some footnote somewhere, but I haven't found it in the places that I would expect it to be if it was being cited as the alternative argument. I have found reference to flat earth in the context of thousands of years ago, people thought the earth was flat, but with recent technological advances, etc., we know that it's a ball. Well, you take that phrase on face value and just accept it and don't critically challenge it at all. But by the schools not telling us that there are opposing views, that actually commits the offence under the Education Act, because there is an opposing view. But the question becomes, does anybody realise that there's an opposing view? I'll be honest, I didn't know flat earth even existed until about 2016. Prior to that, I'd never even questioned it. I'd never questioned it. I'd never thought it was there. I didn't know that the Flat Earth Society, or didn't know that the Flat Earth argument generally even existed. And I would reckon that most head teachers don't either. Some probably do and ignore it. Some know it's there and don't care about it. But I reckon a lot of them don't even realise that there is the alternative view, and it is really, really contentious. But partisan politics is the phrase that they use in the law. And it's worth looking into it from a Google perspective, because partisan politics has got some really good examples of in history where there has been partisan politics in play. And the case that's in question that I was reading about refers to Dick. Was it Dick Cheney? I can't remember. What was the guy's name that did the global warming? He was the American the war guy. What was his name?
Al Gore.
Al Gore. That's the guy. Al Gore. He brought out that contentious documentary called An Inconvenient Truth. And I remember it coming out, but I wasn't interested in it at the time because I wasn't in school. I was probably in work, in my early working career or whatever. And I remember it being discussed, but I didn't understand why it was significant. Now, looking back at it from Flat Earth's perspective, that was considered to be potentially partisan politics because Al Gore was pushing the narrative that global warming, derp, derp, derp. And the people at the time were saying this is just indoctrination. Now, whether or not you accept global warming, Al Gore was and is the leading, most controversial thing in terms of the topic that I'm looking into with regards to partisan politics. So whether you accept global warming or not, the global warming topic was considered whether or not it was partisan politics or not, or was it real world? And basically, the judge said that although it could be seen as being partisan, by merely playing the video in the first place doesn't make it partisan. But the Secretary of State's got to put disclaimers in place saying that it's very controversial, these are not his views, and there is an opposing argument, and that should then stimulate the conversation. And initially they didn't do it, but they did do it and fixed it eventually. And it went to court on the basis of, well, did he do it quick enough and was it there? Should it have been done? And it was decided that he had done enough, so the action failed. But the point was, where there's partisan politics, the Secretary of State, in other words, the national curriculum, should state that it's controversial, that not everybody accepts this and that this is not his view, and that there should be stimulated discussion and debate that follows it when it's seen as contentious. And obviously, the heliocentric narrative is not promoted to children as contentious or that there's an alternative view and there's no stimulated discussion or conversation that flows. It's just accepted that that sun is 93 million miles away and that's it. And it's like, oh, that's interesting, because I'm not even sure whether the head teachers realised that there is an opposing view, an alternative view. I didn't until 2016, but they must have come across it in the past. And I'm sure people that are older than me are aware that people have been questioning the shape of the Earth for centuries.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any precedents that relate to the support for an alternative theory before it? Because obviously you could get all kinds of fringe stuff. Is there a way in which either level of support or route of validation that is required to kind of qualify as an alternative that should be heard?
Well, they do use geocentrism as the alternative, and there is some mention of it. They do discuss an element of it, and they basically tell it the way it is. That they see it as a circle, and that we're the center of the Earth, center of the universe, rather than orbiting the sun. And it's mentioned in passing, but it is mentioned. So it's like, well, at least they get mentioned. And from the school's point of view, they would say, well, yeah, all right, you may have an opposing view, but that doesn't make. Are we expected to present all views? Because there are concavers, there are hollow earthers.
It can be qualified to be presented. Is there a mechanism there that identifies something as a valid alternative view? Is there
No, I think it's just whether or not people are aware that there's an alternative view. I actually had a conversation with Conspiracy Cats about this, because I rang him to ask him would he speak to me, and he actually said he would. And when I had my first hangout with Conspiracy Cats, he did say to me that it was done with the blessing of his head teacher at the time. And I didn't really put any emphasis on that. I just thought he was just running it by him out of courtesy. But what it turns out that on this occasion, the headmaster was allowing it because he was actually complying with this rule that I was reading about, which is that if there's if there's an alternative or opposing view, there should be a fair reflection based on that. It should have a balanced discussion.
Right,
and that's
so
what
there is then a challenge, isn't there? Because the flat Earth is actually mentioned within the syllabus, whether that's more within history, where it's used and raised as a ridicule, and raised at that point. There is a point there then that maybe there's a misrepresentation within the curriculum of the flat Earth model because it's only portrayed historically as a foolish belief.
Yeah.
It's not given fair representation with regards to scientific.
Correct. And that's the point that I want to, that I realize is that most head teachers probably won't realize that there is the opposing view and that we're actually out there. Because let's be honest, how would you know that flat Earth was a topic unless you were on YouTube? And I wasn't on YouTube until very recently. And I reckon most people are not on YouTube. And if they are on YouTube, they're not looking for flat Earth. So this is the only platform that we've really got to spread our word.
Sorry, if I'm about to steal your thunder, just shut me up straight away, okay? So I certainly have heard people give reference to pupils bringing up flat Earth in lessons and discussing it with teachers. If you know of any instances where this has happened, even if it's a reference to someone else's reference, let us know.
Yeah, we want.
I know, I've got someone like that.
Roxanne's kids do, don't they?
Yeah. Cue Roxanne.
My one of my friends is a science teacher in a girls' grammar school, and she's had a couple of conversations with students about things around the flat Earth topic.
Yeah, it does seem to happen, but we don't know enough occasions where it does, and where it does happen. Like, we want to know how was it dealt with, because I think that because what it says is that where there is an opposing view, if it's been presented to the pupils whilst whilst they're on property of the school, the head teacher has got an obligation, a legal obligation, to allow a fair, balanced counter argument to be presented. And that doesn't happen as far as I'm aware. Now, it did happen with Conspiracy Cats. Credit for the school, whatever school he was at, credit for that. But I wonder, would it be the same in other schools? And I would suggest probably not. It would probably be ridiculed. And I just find it that what we need to really know is, are there any examples where children have brought up flat Earth in the context of the classroom, and how was it dealt with? Was it ridiculed, dismissed? But because the head teacher in them schools then has an obligation, even though we won't even know about it, but once it's been brought up in the school, the Board of Governors, the LEA, Local Educational Authority, and the head teacher has got a duty to ensure that a balanced discussion of the opposing view is presented to the pupils. Now, that's interesting, because
we've got a bit of clarity on something there just before you move on. You're saying this opposing view presented to the pupils. Now, I'm just thinking, does that mean the pupils have to themselves raise it in classroom debate, or what mechanisms do you think that means? Because that's it almost seems like a control mechanism. If you can't talk about it until it's been raised, how do you raise it?
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll screen share now, and I'll if you present me, Nathan, I'll run through quickly what it was that me and Roxanne were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And basically, this is are we on, Nathan?
Yeah, you're on.
So back in the day when I did my degree, this is how we did legal research. You had to physically go to a library, and you had to look up Halsbury's Laws of England. And Halsbury's Laws is where all of the statutory law are based. That is the database. It was manual, and it took ages. And you can guarantee that the page that you want had been ripped out by somebody previous, because the assignments don't change per year, and the pages get ripped out because that's what students do. So it's always missing. But anyway, the point is that that's what you do. You have to go and find the relevant, and this process takes ages as well. You have to physically go somewhere, and it takes ages, and you often don't get what you want. Now, these days, it's done this way. And because it's done this way, it makes it so comfortable and easy for us to work through, because we can do it at our convenience, and the pages are not missing. And this is where the laws are all based. So obviously, you can see the law of agency, you can see armed forces law, you can see auction law, broadcasting, all these. But when I scroll down to the education section, I can look into this, and I can see that under paragraph 6 or paragraph 6, we can see that at the bottom here in yellow, we can see that this is where the law comes from, the duty to secure the implementation of the national curriculum for England. That's where the law saying that the national curriculum's got to be implemented by all the schools, all state schools in England, right? That is the law. I mean, if you click into that, you can read it. But what I wanted to show you was, there we go. As I go further down, it talks about the national curriculum in Wales. Well, Wales, it's not relevant for this point. Sex education is not relevant, but politics comes up as a specified
Sorry, got to stop
part.
you. Martin, I'm really sorry. Wales is definitely relevant.
It is, but not in this context.
You'll cause an uprising.
I know.
Statements like that.
In context is important. Let's not take the context out. Wales is important, but in this context, it's not, because we're not looking at Wales. Sex education, obviously, that's had its fair share of controversy over the years. But for this, what we're interested in, it's not important. But there's this section called politics, and I was like, really? I was just initially I wasn't seeing the angle. But there's two sections to it. There's one called political indoctrination, heliocentricity, And then there's another one that says the duty to secure balanced treatment of political issues. So when we open up that, I'll deal with the first one first, the political indoctrination, right? You have to switch your brains on a little bit and think about this in two contexts. Think about this in the context of flat Earth being pushed by people like us, and whether or not we could be satisfied, or if we could be identified as political indoctrinators. But also think about heliocentricity, because heliocentricity, I would say, satisfies the definition for political indoctrination. But it says the local authority, governing body, and head teacher must stop the pursuit of partisan political activities by any of those registered pupils. So obviously kids can't get involved in it at a school, and the promotion of partisan. Sorry, I'm getting feedback from someone. The second thing is the promotion of partisan political views in the teaching of any subject. So yeah, sure, the ballers can say, well, that'll be flat Earth, then it's partisan, but it also applies to heliocentricity within the concept, within the confines of physics or science, generally, whichever, because it's any subject. So it's not just aimed at flat Earth. And yeah, you could try and argue it, but I'm thinking that heliocentricity fits into this because, and I'll go into the reasons for why later. But basically, if heliocentricity could be defined and satisfying the definition for partisan politics, then the head teacher must forbid it. Shouldn't be taught in schools, which is my position, because I think that it does satisfy the definition of political indoctrination. And I'll come back to it in a sec. But this is where it gets interesting. The next thing says that under the next paragraph, the local authority, governing body, and the head teacher must take such steps that are reasonably practicable to secure that where flat Earth is brought to the attention of pupils whilst they are in attendance at a maintained school, or taking part in extracurricular activities, the pupils are offered a balanced presentation of the opposing view. That's really important, that, because the balanced presentation of the opposing view, you guys all know that it's ridiculed, right? How many schools are actually going to give a balanced presentation of the opposing view? Would the teachers even be qualified to be able to do it? Because none of them have had any of the conversations. I would say Conspiracy Cats is probably the most qualified, and he's the least qualified of the most qualified, if you know what I mean. So,
I spoke to my cousin the other day, and she goes to a school in Ealing, and basically she's saying that she's spoke to her teacher and said that why haven't you taught the flat Earth model as well instead of the heliocentric model, because you're not actually given a fair representation of both. And the teacher was kind of stumped and kind of backed off it. But it is happening in schools, and there is kids out there actively nowadays trying to speak to their teachers and trying to get the flat Earth just to basically talk about the flat Earth in school. If you get what I mean.
This is the point, though, because I didn't know until yesterday that if you bring to the attention of the pupils that flat Earth is an alternative view, right, the head teacher has then got a legal responsibility to ensure that then pupils are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views, right? And this is the law. They've got to do it.
Tony,
that's a good point that you should.
This is in the political section, which is, I think, slightly harder. If you had similar legislation within religious education teaching, I think it's easier to fit in with the fact that you can disprove it scientifically, show that it is faith-based what they're teaching. So if you can find something similar, I would say, within the treatment of religious education, that would probably validate the argument in a stronger way than in a political.
Well, then I would go back to this, what it says. It says...
it's harder to argue as political. You can't you? Do you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is if you've got a religious context of teaching, and there's mitigation for teaching all religious opinions, then actually you can prove the point in law that their statements are religious, and therefore...
Well, it's not religious. It's the phrase is partisan political. And I'll come to it in a sec. I'm not finished on it yet. I will come to it.
Sorry.
But bear in mind that it's in any subject, right? It's not just in flat Earth. It is in heliocentricity, including the religions, right? And I can see how this would apply in religious parts of the syllabus. I get it, right? But we're not. This applies in physics. This applies in the solar system. This applies in the national curriculum in all parts, because it says in any subject. So I'm all right with what it says. And
No, I don't mean it like that. I mean, this is under a subsection of treatment of subject matter with regards to political issues. What I'm saying is there a subsection of treatment of subject matter under religious considerations?
let's wait until we get
I know.
Let's wait till we get to the definition of partisan politics, because the answer lies there. And I am coming to it. It's on one of the slides, so just bear with me. I will address it, and you'll see that religion is included in the partisan politics, and you'll see for why.
I should do so.
So anyway, so basically, the secondary point is that, partisan or not, if there are political issues that are brought to the attention of other pupils whilst they're in school, then the head teacher, the LEA, the local authority, and the board of governors have to offer a balanced presentation of opposing views legally in law. That's what the law is. Now you can see that there's a footnote there, number 9. If I open up the footnote number 9, you can see that the law is to do with the Education Act 1996, section 407(1), and it says, a balanced approach does not involve equality. Balanced means nothing more than fair and dispassionate. And then there is a case, and I've highlighted the case for myself because obviously that's going to form part of the paper that I'm writing. But then we can go into the case and we can see with the gist of it. And this is the case where the claimant had 2 sons at a state school, and it was to do with the Al Gore global warming video, but specifically to do with the meaning of the word partisan in the term partisan politics. And it was accepted that it was a political film in that it argued that global warming was caused by man, and that urgent and, if necessary, expensive and inconvenient steps had to be taken to counter it. So in this context, it was political, right? Now, we can argue comfortably that heliocentrism is political because there's loads of reasons why you can get in political. But for the minute, let's move on because I want to show what the conclusion of it was. Inevitably, there was a promotion of partisan political views, irrespective of the publication of guidance, since the breach of the statute would be irremediable. And what this is basically saying is that if they did produce this video, if they did show this video in school, it would break the law. That's what the argument was. And the judge had to decide whether or not that was true. So it was to do with what the meaning of the words in 406 and 407 actually meant. In particular, the meaning of the word partisan, and whether or not the ambit of the duty of the local education authority to stop the promotion of such views, and the meaning of the duty to offer a balanced presentation of opposing views if and when political issues are brought to the attention of pupils. So you could do this with heliocentricity and flat earth, not one or the other. You could do it with both. But what the judge decided, and all the yellow bits here are the parts that support heliocentricity being partisan, and there's a lot. The word partisan has to be construed as meaning one-sided, and in court it gives some factors that are going to influence whether or not it's true, whether or not it's partisan. And look at this bit. It says, a superficial treatment of the subject matter typified by portraying factual or philosophical premises as being self-evident or trite with insufficient explanation or justification, and without any indication that they might be subject of legitimate controversy. Well, that's basically encapsulated the whole of the heliocentric argument, because, I mean, let's be honest, heliocentricity satisfies all of that. So it's like, well, that's heliocentricity in insufficient explanation or justification without any indication that might be subject to legitimate controversy. Well, we wouldn't exist, really, would we, if that wasn't true? Anyway, the second part, the deployment of material in such a way as to prevent pupils meaningfully testing the veracity of the material, that's pictures from space, NASA, all that mumbo jumbo, and forming independent understanding to how reliable it was. Well, we laugh at NASA.
Slide out there. You missed out the misleading use of scientific data, misrepresentation and half-truths, and one-sidedness.
Did I? Oh, sorry. Yeah, the misleading. Yeah, that's right. The misleading use of scientific data, misrepresentations and half-truths, and one-sidedness. Thanks, Adam. So that's heliocentricity in a nutshell. That's all of it, because it is one-sided. It is half-truths. I mean, they don't tell you about that you need a container for gas pressure. They don't tell you that there are problems with the heliocentric argument, and they probably don't realize, to be fair, most of them. But nonetheless, we're definitely describing heliocentrism in this. And then we have the part 2, the deployment of material in such a way as to prevent pupils meaningfully testing the veracity of the material and forming an independent understanding to how reliable it was. Well, we all laugh at NASA, right? No one on their side really brings up pictures from space. I know they argue it, but we laugh at it, and they know we laugh at it, and they just don't bother bringing it up because they know we laugh at it, because it's not exactly reliable. We can't repeat it. It's not reliable in that context. And that's
A-level students doing the gravity experiments.
Yeah. Number 3, the exaltation of protagonists. So you're thinking Neil deGrasse Tyson, Cox, Brian Cox, all these heliocentric priests that we laugh at and call names of. That's what this is talking about, the exaltation of protagonists and their motives, coupled with the demonization of opponents, that would be us, and our motives. Again, that would be us, and that's what happens. We get demonized. Maybe not so much in school because they're a little bit more politically correct, but look at the way that these ballers treat us, right? The scorn and ridicule. So that's definitely in there. Heliocentrism is fitting perfectly at this moment. And get this, number 4, the derivation of the moral expedient or a moral expedient from assumed consequences, requiring the viewer to adopt a particular view and course of action in order to do right as opposed to do wrong. In other words, you don't want to be a flat earther. You're going to get laughed at. You won't get a job. Your life will be doomed. That's what that's talking about. It's trying to get them to behave in a particular way based on what they tell them is right compared to what is wrong. And we all do get taught that sun's 93 million miles away. It's taught as fact. And that basically, that pulls heliocentricity within the meaning of partisan. And obviously you could apply that to lots of things, but particularly religious stuff. So this Adam is where it's being brought in.
That is, mate, that what you found there, that one paragraph is just absolutely outstanding, mate, because it qualifies in law the root and basically sums up what we've been trying to say, but the way it qualifies into the flat and heliocentric argument it's just so applicable, isn't it?
It's perfect. It describes all the trolls on the heliocentric side perfectly,
even down to the societal demonization of us. It's fantastic. That
I agree. And that's why I've got this in different highlights, because they mean different things. Like the yellow is for my course, and like the red bit is to emphasize the bits that should be yellowed, but re-emphasizing the bits. Because this is exactly
the exaltation of protagonists, mate. I mean, it doesn't get any more applicable, does it? Like you say with Foxy and
this is Neil deGrasse Tyson and Brian Cox. Anyway, check this out.
And when it's talking about a little bit in a minute about films and stuff, you've then got all the NASA stuff, which is films.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's why it all applies. But get this right. So that was the first point from the judge, right? The second point says the mere distribution by the Secretary of State to schools to facilitate the showing of the film, or in this case, Flat Earth, and accompanied by guidance was not per se or irremediably a promotion of these partisan political views. So in other words, you can play partisan views, but it's to do with, let me carry on. It says the statute could not possibly mean that 406 was breached whenever a partisan political film was shown to pupils in school time. However, what was forbidden by the statute was political indoctrination. So a teacher who in the course of school day and as part of the syllabus presents to his pupils with the appropriate setting and with proper tuition and debate, that bit doesn't happen, a film or document which itself is promoted in a partisan way, some political view could not possibly be the mischief against which the statute was intended. So in other words, as long as teachers aren't being unreasonable, the teachers are not going to be accountable, which I never thought they would be anyway. But this basically is the decision that says that teachers won't be. But just contrast that to the likes of Tim Peaks, who is doing the circuit on the university circuit now, telling everybody how great space is. Would he be classed as the same? Would he be treated as the same? Because he's clearly in a different set of rules, isn't he? He's not the same as a normal, like, conspiracy cats kind of teacher. Anyway, so that's just bear in mind that generally teachers will not be covered by it. But the third point, it says, in order to comply with the requirements of 406 and 407 of the Education Act, and this is really important, the Secretary of State, when actively distributing the film, had to make clear that some or all of the matters contained therein were not supported or promoted by him, and that there was a view to the contrary. Now, is that done with heliocentricity? No, I would say not, because they generally accept it as fact. It is taught as fact. So is the Secretary of State should he be saying that when the heliocentric narrative is being taught, Should he be saying that these were not necessarily his views, not promoted by him, and that there was a view to the contrary? I would say he should be, because it is contentious. People don't necessarily agree with it, believe it, or accept it. Hence why we're here. Anyway.
Well, with that, I'm going to say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate, informative though it was. And, of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel, especially Anthony Riley, for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, you know exactly what to do. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
And that's why it does. Al Gore's video made it in there as part of the argument, and it's like, this is interesting.
Right, Anthony, do you want me to continue to record? I'll leave you on record.
Why did you stop?
Because I've got to go and get my wife.
Fuck your wife, man. Fuck your wife.
My wife.
I'm only joking. Right, go and get your wife.
Well, what I'm saying is, do you want me to leave this hangout running and recording if you've got more stuff to say?
Nah, it can be done another time. It's fine.
Okay.
Because this is really rubbing the ballers' noses in it, because what they claim we're doing is wrong, and we can show that actually it's within the law, so piss off.
Fair enough.
I think you're doing sound there, mate. I think that's absolutely awesome what you've achieved there, pal.
Yeah, that paragraph.
Well done. Well
Neil
done for
deGrasse
finding
Tyson.
that.
It's literally describing Neil deGrasse Tyson and the way that we're treated. It's brilliant.
It's like it was written for you. After what the best thing about it is it's actually dealing with as another well ridiculed subject matter, which is the lack of global warming. So it's even in the correct field, because it's a conspiracy ridicule topic as well, isn't it? That's, yeah. That the legislation is defending.
I mean, what's your view on that Al Gore? I mean, you must remember that video coming out, Adam.
Yeah. It's just a propaganda thing for carbon tax.
That's the reason why it was contentious in the schools, and that's why it ended up in court. But it was deemed that he didn't do enough wrong for him to be punished. But the point that the judges were making were that all the points that were being made are all the points that heliocentricity would satisfy, and it's like.
But I think the point is that the judge has to indirectly point out that for him to be able to make that judgment, he's kind of saying there isn't the scientific evidence to make this fact. Therefore, it is politically debatable, and it has, as well as having machinations of taxation and stuff. So there is a political element to it, and I think all that is applicable to the flat Earth.
Right, I agree. All of it is.
Well. Yeah,
and it fits in on all of the points that I was mentioning in that first paragraph, because it is like ridiculing us and trying to guide people down a particular route because it's right over wrong, and then you've got the protagonists. It's just perfectly worded. I agree. It's written perfectly. It's like, oh my god.
You didn't think you'd pull that. You said I'm going to be looking for ages, mate. I didn't think you'd pull something that was so applicable. It's brilliant.
But it took me ages because I was looking in different areas trying to find an angle, and I couldn't really find an angle. I was looking at teachers, I was looking at Board of Governors, I was looking at the Secretary of State himself. I was looking all across, and what really I should have been looking at was the national curriculum, which is what I'm doing it on. I should have been more broad in that area, because that's where I found the answer. But you have to look at everything, try and find the angle anywhere and everywhere, and eventually you'll either get nowhere because the law doesn't exist, which is what I first thought, or you have to look specifically but broadly. And I was looking broadly, but not specifically broadly. And eventually I did find it, and I'm like, holy fuck, that's what the answer is. So obviously that case that I was just talking about with that Al Gore thing, that's what I'm going to be talking about. So I need to think of examples where there's been videos shown about NASA and space and all that. And say that this is just purely indoctrination, and the head teachers have got a legal responsibility to ensure that it doesn't happen. But no teachers realise it. They don't realise that it's an issue.
Yeah. And it's a big issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You're quiet.
Me?
Yeah, you're quiet.
I'm sorry, I took my headphones out. Sorry.
Is Nathan still in or is he gone? Oh, he's still here.
Still here.
Can you turn Roxanne up a little bit?
I don't think they've accounted for this
Oh, that's better.
angle. I think they feel they've covered their backsides by including religious education into the equation, but it's not covering it.
I think they might have written it about propaganda and not realised that it applies to heliocentricity.
Heliocentricity is propaganda.
Yeah, but I don't think that the people realise it is propaganda. I think they think it's fact.
And that's why I think the fact that it's the global warming case that sets the precedent is really valuable, because it is the same level of skepticism that the general public would have about that topic, yet it's still held up in law, which is the good thing.
Yeah, I mean, let me just go back through that first paragraph again, just for the shits and giggles. The word partisan has to be construed as meaning one-sided, and a court gives the factors that influence it. And this first one's perfect. A superficial treatment of the subject matter typified by portraying factual or philosophical premises as being self-evident, gravity, or trite with insufficient explanation or justification. Well, how do you have the gas pressure without the container, right? How do you have the gas pressure without a membrane? But they treat it as though it's trite, and that is what they do. And without any indication that there might be that they might be the subject of legitimate controversy. The misleading use of scientific data, misrepresentations and half-truths, and one-sidedness.
And that goes straight to the impossibility of the vacuum of space, because they're producing one paradigm, but it's in contradiction to what they're teaching in the physics lessons with regards to law of thermodynamics.
So this is where I'm going to get my
these things up with stuff specifically, can't you? Really well.
This is where I'm going to get my 4. I had 5 questions that I was going to address. I'm now going to address 4, and I'm going to tailor it specifically to these 4 points. Yeah. This is where I'm going to get all my marks from. So basically, the deployment of material in such a way as to prevent pupils meaningfully testing the veracity of the material and forming an independent understanding as to how reliable it was. I mean, nobody challenges that, right? Everybody accepts what the spoon-fed in school, and we all laugh at NASA. And it's like that's directly NASA that they're not talking about NASA at this point, but it applies directly to NASA and how reliable most of their stuff is.
Well, it's been such a huge lie that I'm not sure that half of these teachers realise that they're peddling propaganda. I
agree. But then you've got point 3, the exaltation of Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Cox, etc., and their motives, lies, coupled with the demonization of opponents. Well, you've seen Neil deGrasse Tyson dropping his microphone. You've seen Barack Obama, we've not got time for a debate with the Flat Earth Society. That's ridicule, and that's not demonization, but it's putting everyone down, right?
Tony, that's a great one, mate. That's a great one, because you've actually got a leading political figures. All of those political figure statements where they do drop the flat Earth, they should come in to qualify that it is of political partisan, because they're the ones that start to do the demonstration of a partisan attitude towards it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
By treating it in the superficial subject manner. We don't have time for a meeting of the flat Earth. That's a superficial treatment, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely is. And this when I was reading this, I was just like, holy fuck. And all this yellow there is basically the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in my paper, because basically it's like, oh my God, this all applies, all of it.
That's what they teach you in school. They teach you, like, back in the day, some ignorant scribes in some caves thought that the Earth was flat. But then we've discovered it's round because we've got telescopes now and we've got this. But it's all propaganda because it's not true and there's not any proof to back it up.
Yeah.
And they've got lovely stories, haven't they? They've got that Aristophanes, and they've got their Cavendish experiment, and they've got their Foucault's pendulum, which they all teach in school.
But somebody said earlier on that sticks in the ground. And
someone said earlier on that there's no proof that Aristophanes even existed. And
that was me.
I tend to agree with that, because, I mean, can you name anybody in history that's remembered just by their surname? Like,
well, the thing about Aristophanes is he's not referenced by any of the leading people at the time, the librarians and so on. No one else references him. That's the thing. That's the thing I discovered. No one talks about him. He's just someone that everybody points to nowadays. But whether he existed or not is kind of dubious in my mind.
I agree. Because you don't, I mean, Michael Jackson, right? You might call him Jacko, but he's not known as Jackson. But then you could argue, well, Madonna, that she's known by one name, and Sting, but they're not their real names. That's a pseudonym for the character that is the artist, right? The real person's name.
Yeah,
they just
exactly.
So Madonna as a character, the artist, only exists whilst she's still alive in terms of. Basically, what I'm saying is, it's like what Pete Shea says about the legal name fraud. There are two different characters. There's Madonna, the person, the real biological matter that will die, but there's also Madonna, the artist, the commercial artist, who she can choose to die when she wants, because it's a different It's a pseudonym. It's not a real name.
With regards to Aristophanes, I assumed he was a Middle Ages invention. The only reference to him is as the librarian at Alexandria, but there is no mention with regards to his experiment that proves such profound things. He's just referenced as the librarian at Alexandria, I think, and that's where he's then as the person that then did that experiment. But it's just another Middle Ages dodgy monk writing a story, isn't it? Yeah, as they build the Bohr model story up. I mean, the tale to me is at best 500 years old and didn't exist before that, like a lot of the claims.
And they also changed people as well. Like Newton didn't necessarily agree. Well, he said he had no formal hypothesis, but still we get taught in school that Newton's the man if you want to go to and talk about gravity.
The thing is, Newton's earlier work was all pro-gravity. It was only his later work where he started to back away from his original work. So I don't know where that I make no hypothesis of gravity. I don't know whether that's been misquoted or quote mined in some way, because
No, he just figured it out. It's logical. He was getting into it, building onto it, just like me, assuming, yeah, this is going to go where I expect it to go. And then his colleagues revealed certain information to him that they probably knew that it couldn't be, and he figured it out. That's basically it. So he then just like, oh shit, this is all wrong. This group is lying. Basically, they're trying to fabricate lies, and he then just retracted in the best way he could.
The problem with Newton's work, though, is it became like binding or leading after his death. It wasn't pushed while he was alive.
But that was the plan all along. Make him do the work, then when he's dead, use it. And even you could martyr him, perhaps, or whatever. That's how they worked. They basically just abused him, and he didn't know it, at least at first.
I think a lot of Newton's explanations, or the way he's portrayed now, occurred after his death. He was quite a renegade as well. There's a lot of stuff he wrote outside of the scientific stuff with regards to history again, questioning chronology of Egypt and made up and stuff. So I think he was an absolute genius, and not necessarily as compliant as we would think. I think that construction occurs after his death, as they use his work to support the paradigm that they're building. But I think, as you see later, if you fully read all his work, he doesn't necessarily support it as much as they would have you.
Correct. But the other thing is, if you read all his work, it's written in Latin, and it's written in a prose that is like hundreds of years old. And it's really difficult to understand what he's actually, because it's been translated, it's been converted based on an old style of Latin anyway. And that creates like translation issues, because everyone's got a different way of translating what he says, and not so much what he says, but the way he means things, because you lose a lot of the expression in the language, and they spoke differently back then.
Why did they write it in Latin?
I don't know.
English. It's English people. It's so weird.
Well,
Is that like the university language of the time?
It was the intellectual. It was the intellectual language of the day, basically.
Right.
Well, the other thing with Newton's interesting. Adam, what's your view on this? Newton's first law of motion states that an object will remain at rest unless acted upon by a force. But we see that the egg in the water experiment, we see the egg when it's in neutral buoyancy and it's floating in the medium. When you add the salt, the egg will move. Now, according to Newton, that requires a force. But according to the definition of force, there isn't one because it requires an interaction and a push or a pull between two objects. So unless you can argue that the salt dissolves into the water and creates a push that pushes the egg up, which seems illogical, it would seem that there's no force to make the egg move as per Newton's first law.
No, that follows Newton's law.
That's the medium that it's in, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
you
add the salt, okay, to the medium, okay, and in doing so, you change the physicality of that medium. You don't make any chemical change, but you do change its physicality. You make it more dense.
Yeah.
And doing so, that creates a buoyant force.
Well, the definition of force doesn't support that, though.
Because what you've done, what you've done is shove a load of salt underneath the egg. Now, you've done that in a physical solute way, but you've basically put a load of stuff underneath. And in the physical chemical world, that's what's happened. You drop it in, and then on an atomic level, loads of it goes underneath. And that is what you've done. The physical process of solution has kind of pushed it underneath. And that will then generate a resultant.
But if that was true, shouldn't it move the egg with the medium it's in up a little bit, but
it does
united rather than
the whole medium changes. The medium doesn't stay the same. The whole medium itself, when you put the salt in, changes in its physical nature.
Right. So that's not the same as putting the salt at the bottom and pushing the egg up. That's different.
In a way, it's analogous, Tony, to taking the egg out of that medium and putting it into the saline solution. Because until the salt's dissolved, do you know what I mean? You're kind of placing it in that different medium. There is a physical force going off in the solution process that's occurring, because this physical movement of the ions and realignment within the structure of the medium that the egg's sitting in. So you are changing it physically.
Yeah, but are you satisfying the definition of force, though? Is there an interaction between the two objects?
Yes,
push or a
there's
pull?
displacement cause, isn't there?
Yeah,
you're just changing the pressure of the medium upon the object by making it more dense. Physical structures become more pressurable to the object.
Isn't it a lot better, these hangouts, when we don't have the ballers fighting with us? It's a lot nicer when we just have the conversations ourselves.
Well, we don't know the answer fully, but at least you can answer honestly.
Yeah, that's the word, isn't it? Honestly.
So that's their trouble. They have to pretend they know the answer to everything. They seem to have a problem with saying, I'm not quite sure on that. I don't fully, you know what I mean? It's if they do that, it's a weakness that means, you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with not knowing.
Of course not.
Most of medicine, you don't really know.
So it's just the way they've been teaching it in schools. Because when they say that, oh, these ignorant scribes, and they say, oh, these people were, like they didn't really know anything and all that type of stuff. So when anyone comes across it in the real world, like I was in Hammersmith yesterday, and I was talking to a person, and they were like, you can see that the programming is just kicking in. Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh no, gravity. Oh no, gravity. Oh no, we've proven it, but it hasn't been proven. Do you know what I mean? It's just what people have been taught.
Yeah, that's it. They haven't proven gravity, but they tell kids as though it's true, and they conceptualize it. But it's a reification fallacy because, like, conceptualizing something doesn't make it true.
Well, in school, we're taught that begging the question's fine. In school, we're taught that affirming the consequence is fine.
But look, they officially still teach the theory of gravity. They still remain it's a theory, and then
but they treat it as though it's real. That was my criticism of you, Arwin.
They just claim pretty early on, like, yeah, I think this is the most logical solution. I'll go with that. That's basically how the teachers tend to fall back onto it. And I guess I would do that too, although I would emphasize a lot more like, yeah, it's not really that, it's just an aberration. But yeah, it is useful. It's a useful tool in calculating things, even though it's not actually physically provable.
How do you have a useful tool that's not physically provable?
Because it does make things a lot easier in modeling.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Well, architects will, trust me.
Oh, maybe
Use
they
it
will.
all the time.
Maybe they will. That doesn't mean the
They have special building design programs that apply gravity to it and other forces as well.
Anthony,
I'm gonna set the phone ringing. I'll be back in a sec.
let me get my balls out.
I think the main problem that we're coming across is that most people think the flat Earth talk is primitive. They would actually think that it's primitive, and there's not much behind it because you don't really know anything and you haven't looked at science. But most of us have done the research, and we actually do realize that the world is flat. But trying to get that across to somebody in a small space of time is, is difficult. That's why I commend, like when you go out and you do your the tours and you go and speak to people, I commend it.
You need to be ready for it. You need to be socially strong enough to deal with it.
I mean, if you go to my channel, I do go out and talk to people, but I don't go in I'm not like the John Smith Globe Lie. I don't talk for as long, but I will kind of say, oh, so what do you believe? Do you think the world's round, or do you think it's a flat, or do you think what do you think? And then some people will say, round. But then you get some people that say it's flat. Some people say they've got hollow Earth, and do you know what I mean? So people are waking up. They are definitely waking up.
Yeah, Hollow Earth has been out there. Hollow Earth, I think, is like an older program. Be honest, I think that actually the Nazis invented that.
They went looking for it, didn't they?
Yeah, but so you have to assume they invented it because they're the ones that carried all that lore, and they were two propagandizers and would invent a lot of things. So
we don't actually know if that's true or not.
Yeah, but there may be lands, but to assume that's literally hollow, it kind of that hollow Earth, the original hollow Earth, it really is like a hollow globe. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I mean,
you approach the Hebrew model, but that's the thing. The Nazis would never do that, so they would go with the hollow Earth. The Nazis kind of big time went with the globe concept, and it's complicated.
But I think it works for both models, globe or heliocentric, because I mean, you can have a hollow globe and you can have a hollow level plane. Do you know what I mean? There could be space underneath that we don't actually know about.
It's an older narrative that has been reinvented to basically give a next step in the ladder of information and narratives for them that they will kind of allow in the official conspiracy media idea. See, they'll let that in a lot quicker than just generalized flat Earth, and especially flat Earth science. That's going to take a long time. That they can't basically allow that to sink in. They can't make that part of their narrative.
Yeah, because
they're gonna before flat Earth actually hits anything, they will try to create like an alternative UFO believer hollow Earth concept,
and
like push that more, push concepts based on that more.
And they've got a lot of the old simulation theory and that. Like everyone will cling on to simulation and cling on to hollow Earth, but when it comes to flat Earth, everyone's like, "Oh no, it's primitive. Oh no, you lot are ignorant. You don't."
But simulation theory is perfect for is like a perfect next or right next to for the transhumanists and for the digiheads that want to implant chips in themselves, because they are out there and they are being promoted big time. So they won't have any problem with the idea of a simulation theory. See, because they are already so much into that conceptualization.
I mean, if you went out there banners and said, you know what, the world is a simulation, you'd have a lot more of balanced response. But then when you're going out there and you're saying, you know, the world is flat, it's just difficult. Do you know what I mean? It's just the way it's been pushed towards people. So this is the way it's been taught, and you can't really blame them. It's just the way that they've been taught,
But it's
and
because a simulation doesn't exclude anything. It just makes it less tangible, as it were, or not surreal. But a flat Earth, it excludes space from virtually existing.
yeah,
And
you're
that
right.
is what people instinctively don't like about it, because it takes away so much of what they spend their time dwelling on.
The programming, yeah.
No, with the fantasies, you have to realize that's very important about it. It's what maintains people in there. They love it because there's so much fantasy room and things to imagine and think about in movies, and so much. People dwell on this stuff a lot. I did. I used to do that a lot.
Adam, what did you want for?
I'm going to shoot in a sec, guys. I'll just put my camera on. I was just pondering. When you're talking about the water in solution, if you've got your water molecules like that, lot, and they're just in, flapping around each other in so much space, working around each other, that's it before you put the salt in. And then you drop your salt in, and it'll go to the bottom. You just sit there, and you've got the two volumes, that's that. And then as it dissolves, let's just take that as the sodium, and it comes in. As it comes in and tries to sit, because it's now in solution between these, it will change the interstitial space between these two molecules. It's not going to increase it massively, but there will be a slight volume of distribution change. But more importantly, it realigns stuff. It sits a bit more, so it becomes more dense, if that makes sense. And it's when we're saying forces, what's happening here, as we come in, there is going to be, as it goes into solution, some electromagnetic forces between these electron orbitals as they push and realign. So there will be forces generated from the physical chemistry. Now, whether that's attributable enough to push the egg or,
Yeah, but hang on. You've just contradicted yourself, because you said that there wasn't a chemical change in the water. You said there was a physical change, but you've just been...
It's both.
But have you not just been saying that was chemical?
It's not a chemical change in terms of an interaction. There's this going into solution. That's not classed as a chemical change. It's just a physical change. The sodium chloride is still retrievable. If you evaporate the water off, the salt will be left at the bottom. So there's not a physical change. When you talk physical change in chemistry, it's like if you put sodium chloride, hydrochloric acid into sodium hydroxide, you'd end up with water and salt. And you wouldn't be able to recover the hydrochloric acid and the sulfuric acid without doing further chemical processes to separate them. That would be a chemical change when you interact the two. This is just a physical change. The salt just goes from being a solid to being contained in the water in solution.
Yeah, it's not a physical reaction, is it?
No, it's not a reaction really there. It's just a physical change. In the water stays the same. A little bit of it hydrolyzes, but again, it's not chemical, because when you separate the two, they go back to their component parts. So it's just classed as a physical change.
So are you saying that you could argue for a force?
I'm saying there will be some generation of electromagnetic forces that will be applied during the realignment of the density. As the water increases in its density, as salt dissolves into it, these forces of realignment will occur, moving the molecules so that they can sit happily in solution. So there is some expression, I think, of electromagnetic forces which would realign the molecules into the new density. So that's why I say I don't think it necessarily contradicts Newton, because there is some forces at play.
How remote is the point that you've just made?
Don't know. Just thought I'd make it. But you were saying it breaks first law.
It seems to for me, because I can't see the interaction, a push or a pull. I just see the displacement, but I don't see the interaction. Well, that doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It's just that I don't see the interaction. That's all.
I'm not like saying you are right or wrong. I'm saying exactly what I've just described. From a physical chemistry point of view, there will be some forces generated during the realignment of the density as it dissolves. there is going to be some interaction. For example, this is an Na plus ion. So this is, say, oxygen, and it's going to be wanting to line up around here, these spare electrons that are sat here. What it's not wanting to do is line up around here, which is a hydrogen ion. So it's got a positive charge. This has got a positive charge. So there's going to be a realignment. So it's going to sit there.
Adam, you're boring me, and I mean that in a nice way. It's not my thing, chemistry.
There'll be an expression of force.
Okay.
A generation of force from the physical interaction.
Do you think that Iron Realm Media would be interested in that that thing that I was talking about with the glow?
Yeah, totally. I think I was going to say to you, do you fancy next week or something popping in?
Because partisan politics is a really weird phrase.
Not necessarily on Friday. I was thinking more on the TFR stuff for you to just be able to sit and go through it and then stick it out to that audience, because there's a hell of a lot of common law folk as well that'll be really interested in that. Rather than, I mean, come on Friday anyway. You're always welcome. You know that anyway. But I was actually thinking of speaking to Josh and Walt to get you on again and just do a, because there's some massive change, mate, what you achieve there to get to that, find that legislation is.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realise that there was a political aspect to education. I just thought it was either right or wrong, black or white, you know what I mean? But politics didn't really factor in it for me. And when I saw it, I thought, I was just more curious than specifically looking for it. And I was like, how would politics fit into it? And it dawned on me when I started reading about Al Gore. I thought, holy fuck, this is where heliocentricity would fit into it.
That's wicked, mate. Yeah. Yeah. So, do you want me to have a word with him?
Yeah, if you want to.
I'm talking to Zach tonight anyway, doing this stuff. So
Well, the only trouble with TFR though is that with it being non-visual, it's not easy to have the words on screen.
But you're a very eloquent reader, sir.
Is it not just too dry though without the words?
No, we can stick it. We can stick it in the chat. No, I think the words themselves, mate, are quite profound enough, and I think the simple fact of what you found needs to be announced. But still, come on Friday anyway. Come on this Friday. Devlin will be interested.
Yeah, I think people would generally be interested in this Friday. Yeah,
I'll watch.
Oh, I can't. What time is it on Friday?
Well, you'll have to come on at the end, won't you? So if you've got a late run anyway, it's not a problem. So I think 10:30 start. Mark's going to join us about 11. Will be a good hour and a half or more there. So
It's normally about 1 when you finish, isn't it? Yeah, that's fine because we've got guests over for tea on Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alan B.
Don't drop me a text. Drop Josh a text because I'll never notice it, mate. And when you're ready, and then to come in, and that'll be good because we want to show him some of Zach's work for him to take it to the people he talks to. So bringing that what you're doing, that'll be cool because.
I've got my topic now though. I can do my masters on this because that case there gives me shitloads of discussion points. So my question is going to be: is heliocentricity partisan politics or something along that lines?
No, good job, mate.
Hey, you could be onto something big. I feel it.
I think so because it does satisfy a lot of the definitions for that. But what the judge was saying about what is partisan.
Right, I've got to build my lad's bed. Got to move bed. I've got to put it together.
Need a haircut.
Look at it.
I know. You're looking like Jeffrey Brown.
Hair, it's lovely. Be happy.
I know. I like it long, but it does look like a bloody scare. I look like Wurzel Cummings, mate. Anyway, right, guys, take it easy.
Bye.
See you
later.
Oh, by the way, I checked outside again. It's almost dark.
Yeah.
And there's planes flying over, and they're not leaving any trails. It's just crystal clear. I don't know why. I saw like 3 planes flying over. They left some trails, and they evaporated like 3-4 times plane's length.
I see Roxanne's come off mute.
So
she was wanting to say something.
Yeah, Roxanne's off mute. Roxanne, you there? Roxanne?
Hey, sorry, no, I don't know what's going on with my mic. Sorry, I didn't know it was off mute.
That's all right.
No worries. Yeah, I'm still here.
Cool.
I'm still here.
So, I guess
clear over here, as you can see. Can't see much from my garden though, but I'll see if I can get some footage of the moon.
what country are you in?
Well, I'm in UK. I'm London, Hammersmith.
How's the chemtrails out there?
Oh, you're around the corner from me. I'm just
where?
near Twickenham Rugby Ground.
Oh, nice. Well, just down the road. Yeah, I used to live in Ealing, and I've moved up to Hammersmith with my missus now. She lives down here. Yeah, but yeah. Well, you're only around the corner. That's cool.
Yeah.
It actually makes you feel better when you know. Yeah, right near Hammersmith Apollo. Like I'm in between Hammersmith and Shepherd's Bush, Westfield. There's like a big, massive shopping centre in Westfield. Yeah, I'm just in between there. But it's nice to know that people are close. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. We should link up and go and have a drink and have a talk about it in public as loud as possible.
Get him on Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, man.
Definitely.
Oh, come down to Speaker's Corner. I'm there the last Sunday of every month.
Got some experience.
I'll come down then. I'll come down. Definitely. I'll bring my missus along. And
Yes,
then, we'll have a
please.
nice little chinwag.
Yeah, man. Lovely.
Yeah, she's into Flat Earth as well. That's how I met her, you know.
Oh, brilliant.
That's into it. I don't have to explain too much. Do you know what I mean?
Brilliant. Well, I mean, if you come down to Speaker's Corner the last Sunday of any month, there's a cafe right there at Speaker's Corner. Loads of other people come out as well. It's a good opportunity to meet other people and have a good old, well, sometimes an argument about it with people. But
Let me ask, what are your views on gravity, you and your missus? Yay or nay?
No, of course, it's all nonsense. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like we know there's like, for me, I think there is some sort of like up and down, you know, that kind of thing, because dense things go down.
Get out.
No, but not in that way. But I know that gravity is just basically debunked. It's rubbish. Yeah. But and its density, and do understand that. Me and my missus both understand that. But yeah, there's still just a question. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, why are things down? Why is up? You know what I mean? But gravity is obviously out of the question.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That's great.
So what's your thoughts on it, Roxanne?
Mine's is really observable density and buoyancy. I don't feel there's no forces, or I know that from my primitive point of view, I know that the air soup that we're breathing in is as dense as that is. Water's a bit denser. Then the further down you got submerged lakes, the further up you got the noble gases. And I know I'm not using the correct terminology, but I know that they're thinner and thinner. So it's just density. Everything's a different weight. Everything's a different density, and that's in relation to the air or the
relative is
environment that it's around. Yeah. So for me, there's no up or down. It's just about floating and not floating. And we just happen to be able to breathe this air that we're breathing, but for other creatures, this is impossible, and another type of something's possible. So I don't think it's got anything to do with up and down. But yeah, density and buoyancy. Long story short.
But that is my basic premise of it, density and buoyancy. But I still do have that question of like, why is the ground at the bottom and the air at the top?
Why is up and why is down?
It's not up down, it's just more dense or less dense.
Why is north and south and east and west?
That's true. Makes sense.
It's a description. Just like the
alignment. It is a description.
Yeah, but it doesn't explain it. That's the thing. You're just saying, yeah, look, it works this way. Yeah, we know, but it doesn't explain why it does that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But that's okay, because we don't know. It just appears to be like this, and you could model it, and then, hey, look, gravity, this thing that's very easy, just happens to fit everywhere. So it's useful as a tool, but doesn't make it actually a real force or thing.
It's a virtual tool, Arwen. It's not a real tool.
It's a mathematical
tool. Is a tool.
No, it's got to be a mathematical tool. I've got an imaginary hammer in my hand. Is that a tool?
That depends on what you're gonna bang it with.
Is it a tool? It's a virtual hammer.
Oh yeah, and then I think in your imagination, as a virtual hammer, you could definitely hammer a virtual nail with it.
Okay.
That was a good one.
It's a concept, as Nummy would say.
yeah, but concepts can be very useful.
Right, I'm just going to check the date of the last Sunday of this month. Do you know what
25th.
time you're going to be down
25th,
there?
midday.
Midday, so 12 o'clock noon.
25th, midday. Yep.
Okay, I'll make a little.
Yep. And it's an all-day thing. No rush. We'll be there till about 9, 10 o'clock at night. So it's all good.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I might even bring my son along as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like.
How old is your
the
son?
weird thing with him is he's 8. He's 8 at the moment. The weird thing is, because obviously I used to believe in a globe before. I've only come into the flat Earth about a year and a half ago, and since I've come into it, I've been telling him, the world's flat, and he goes, "Daddy, everything you're saying now is opposite. You used to think the world was round, and now you're saying it's flat." And I'm like, "Look, son, like you learn new stuff every day, and unfortunately, we've been lied to." And you're going to get lied to by your teachers in school, but just have the common sense to know that not everything you're taught is completely real. Still do your books and study and do well, but not everything they're going to be teaching you is going to be completely facts.
Yeah, but really, wait, 8? Why would you tell them that they will lie to him? Because technically, these teachers are very likely to really believe it. So,
well, it
it'll be
depends
very
because
confusing for him.
For me,
it's confusing
my
for
son's
anybody
just
to come
turned
into it.
11.
But if you just tell them, your kids, like, hey, yeah, these teachers, they're gonna tell you these things, and they're gonna think it's real. But yeah, that's like a false teaching, and they don't know it, and it's very delicate. So better just to go along at first and be very careful to. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, with him, he's 8 years old. Well, he's going to be 9, and he's really, really smart for his age. And he's got, like, they've all got internet, and his kids, they all talk, and do you know what I mean? But even his friends have been talking about flat Earth, and they're like 9 years old.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? So this is
cool.
hitting kids at a young age. So it's not just me telling him, because when he goes to speak to his friends, and his friends go and look at it, his friends will come back and say, "Oh yeah, well, what's your daddy's channel's name? Can we go and watch your daddy on the channel?" Do you know what I mean? So they're all getting into it as well. So I mean,
that's fascinating.
It's just it's hard to have to break it to him though. You know what I mean? That
Both of my kids are awake as well. My son's just turned 11, and my daughter's almost 16. And
that's really
when I woke them up, I basically just put it to them like this: we're living in a system. The education is another system within that system. The system is designed for you to get maximum points in order for you to unlock other doors inside this system that make your life a little bit more fruitful. And I basically just analogized the education system to a Call of Duty game and XP points. Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be harsh about it, but the truth hurts, and that's what I said to my kids. Unfortunately,
how did they react when you
is fucked.
How did they react when you told them that the world was flat?
It wasn't a nice process for them, because they went through the back and the forth of you're telling me the opposite. But that's the first thing they needed to know was, well, what is this then? Because if you can't back it up, you're going to make them feel very disillusioned with the system, and then they're just going to become not motivated to do anything, and probably quite argumentative, as my daughter did get initially. My daughter got argumentative.
Was she older?
Well, my daughter's now been awake for about 3 years, and she's almost 16. So when I initially woke her up, she was just about to turn 13, and her grades were on point before I woke her up. I initially woke her up, and within 6 months, her grades started to slip, and it was because she started to lose morale. She didn't really know what the fuck she was doing anymore. And then I had to bring it back to her, and I had to play a game of Monopoly with her and start analogizing enough about life, because I realized that my kids are big analogizers. You give them an analogy that they can relate to, and they get it first time. And I just started to relate to them on a level that they could relate to. And with my kids, it was computer games. My son's heavily into Call of Duty and Fortnite and all of that, and he dedicates a lot of his time at home to maximizing the best out of that game. And I asked him, well, why do you do that? Well, so I can get this and so I can get that. I said, what? So that's a perk then. The better you do, the more perks you get in the game, and the more nice up you feel while you're playing the game. And that's all this is. The system's been designed with the education in place so that you can only unlock certain doors with those numbers in place with your grades. If not, you're going to have to go around the hard, unconventional way, which society doesn't really encourage.
Exactly. That's what I said to my. The way I explained it to my son is that basically, yeah, they will be telling you one thing in school, and that's what I want you to study. You need to study your books to make sure that when you come out of school in life, you don't have to go and sign on. You don't have to go and do things and not have no money.
I'm happy to tell you, my daughter right now, she's got 9s. The only 8 she's got is in maths. She just came home with her mock just last week with a 9 from her physics exam, and that's a distinction. So
nice.
She's awake and she's academically achieving, knowing she's in a system, knowing full well she's in. So there's hope yet for the kids.
Definitely, and they're more open than we think. I mean, I think the older you get, it's harder to wake people up. Because if I try and talk to my uncle or anybody like that, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear it," unless I show them some footage. But kids, they're more open to different ideas and, do you know what I mean, listening out and actually hearing things and researching things themselves. And because they've all got internet nowadays, it's not hard for them to actually look into it. So, I mean, they've tried to do a lot by when you search up flat earth on Google or on YouTube and you see all the debunking stuff come up. But you just have to teach them, look, just make sure you just look around things, do your own research properly. Don't just believe the first thing that comes up in front of your head. Anything I'm teaching you, try and prove me wrong. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I did to my daughter. I told her to debunk what I was telling her, and she couldn't.
Exactly.
She couldn't do it.
That's good. Anyways, I'm going to go and make some food. But I will be at Speaker's Corner on Sunday, and I'll probably be back on the show in the next few days or so.
Awesome.
Take care.
Awesome. I look forward to meeting you, darling.
Yeah, you too. All right.
Take care.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, buddy. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
What's really cool is more and more people are coming to this. Like normal people that are not like people that push it, people that are just coming to it as a result of seeing the push. The ballers hate that.
They can't stop the natural tide of people waking up, can they?
Can't censor the streets like that. They can censor the internet, but they can't censor the streets. People take it to the streets. It's another problem for them altogether. It already is another problem for them altogether because it's already out onto the streets. I'm incredibly encouraged by the majority of people I speak to now either being open to it, know someone who knows about it, or they're willing to stop and talk about it.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to go off and do my mummy mode. I've got to go and do dinner now. But thank you very much for having me here. I've enjoyed this afternoon. It was great. Cheers.
Rox, before you disappear, things, call me on Skype.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. No worries. I will do. All right, darling. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Roxanne.
I think I'm going to drop as well, given that Roxanne's about to call, so I'll catch you guys later.
Take care, mate.
Later.
All right, see you later.
Right, I'm going to go get some dinner too, while and I'll speak to you later. Are you doing your Skype thing again tomorrow morning?
It's not a Skype thing, really.
So, yeah, but if you need anybody around, mate, I've friend requested you on Skype, so if you need to chat or something in the morning, I'm around.
Sure, yeah, you're always welcome.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks, mate. Are you going to be around later?
I'm gonna hang around here and there, see what's up. Nothing special.
All right, all right, great talking to you, mate. I'll speak to you soon.
All right, see you tomorrow. Please. Bye.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!